Hey, good morning. Patricia Murphy here. It's Saturday. This is Seattle Now. Today we're bringing you the best from the KUOW Newsroom. First, King County employees are pushing back hard over their return to office mandate. Their new boss, Gurmai Zahalai, is requiring them to report to their office buildings at least 3 days a week by June 1st. He says this is to improve service and transparency, but union leaders and employees say the planning has been rushed and it lacks crucial details. Amy Radel has the story.
King County closed its administration building in downtown Seattle during the pandemic and never reopened it. The offices it housed have relocated, but standing in the lobby, King County Council member Reagan Dunn said its shadowy spaces are symbolic of a work-from-home culture that he's determined to change.
And let me just tell you, as I stand around here, I'm the least popular guy in King County government.
Last year, Dunn, a Republican, introduced legislation requiring county employees to work in the office 3 days a week. The proposal didn't pass, but Dunn says it created momentum for the return to office process that the new King County executive, Gurmai Zahalai, is now pursuing.
It's really hard to say, oh my gosh, it's draconian to bring us back 3 days a week, because most Americans are out there working in the office in most cases more than that. And so it was designed to force the hand of whomever was going to be the new exec.
Office workers make up about a quarter of the county's more than 18,000 employees. Dunn says he wanted to head off attempts by labor unions to enshrine remote work for office workers permanently. He says in-person work is key for collaboration, morale, and building public trust. Zahalai has delivered a similar message, calling for better visibility and customer service through what he calls boots on the ground. But one public health employee we spoke to said the mandate feels performative and half-baked. KUOW agreed to not use employees' names because they feared repercussions to their jobs. This employee said she's not opposed to working in the office, but the current setup is inadequate.
We need focused workspaces, and the reality is that county buildings are not equipped to host the number of employees that are being mandated back.
In another county department, Natural Resources and Parks, employees say this change is even more wrenching because 1,200 staffers are fully remote and have no dedicated space to return to. Some workers now live outside King County and say they're accustomed to visiting work sites, but going to downtown Seattle would take hours each day.
I've actually cried. I'm starting to right now. And all this angst that we get from these silly emails we get over and over from people that know nothing about what we do.
I love my job. I love what I do. And this autonomy and flexibility allows me to do what I do best effectively.
If they pumped the brakes and took time to really listen to the concerns of their employees and to try to work with people to treat us like people, like they value us, I don't think we'd be having these conversations.
Bringing everyone to the office 3 days a week is expected to cost $22 million, partly to add 1,700 new workspaces, in part because the county has hired more staff since 2020. In an interview with KUOW, King County Executive Gurmai Zahalai said his own staff is coming into work at least 3 days a week. He calls the difference undeniable.
We're able to build relationships amongst team members, especially new team members in a new administration. That is critical. Our decision-making is faster, and the environment is just more enjoyable and more productive that we're all here.
Zahalai says as a new dad, he also sees the family benefits of some remote work, which is why he's pushing the hybrid schedule. But employees say they still see chaos ahead as departments commit to varying deadlines. Kara Matson represents county employees with Teamsters Local 117. She's part of a coalition negotiating with county leadership over the Department of Natural Resources employees.
These employees have built their lives around this, and they feel like they've been deceived or tricked.
Matson says employees packed a recent meeting, partly to illustrate the space constraints. She says employees are supposed to submit new telework agreements. The unions are advising them not to commit to the in-office schedule. Amy Radel, KUOW News.
Next, a story about Latino farm workers in Washington state who are searching for answers because years after contracting COVID-19, their health has not returned to normal. SPR's Rural Affairs reporter and Murrow News fellow Monica Carrillo-Casas has more.
During the blueberry harvest in Oregon in 2021, Baldomero Munoz was working another long day in the fields when he started feeling dizzy. Munoz kept working, thinking it would pass, but the next day he felt worse. A few days later, Munoz tested positive for COVID-19. The 75-year-old says even though it's been 5 years since his initial diagnosis, he continues to deal with symptoms on a daily basis.
To this date, my legs feel weak. I can't run anymore, and for about 3 seconds, I forget where I am.
Munoz believes he has long COVID. Researchers and physicians describe long COVID as a condition where the patient continues to feel lasting symptoms despite testing negative. In a study conducted by the University of Washington Latino Center for Health, about 41% of agricultural workers reported experiencing symptoms of long COVID. Leo Morales, one of the lead researchers, says it could be that many were late to access the vaccine.
There is a certain strain of skepticism and, I would say, misinformation that flows through the Latino community that, people are hesitant to do it. The vaccine will give you the disease. That's one concern.
Munoz began picking strawberries in the Oregon fields in 1994 and then went back and forth between Oregon and Washington to pick grapes and blueberries. While the work is hard, he says his love for the fields has only grown. He says he often sings the day away during busy seasons. His commitment to the fields didn't change when he first got COVID. At the time, Munoz says he didn't realize how serious his symptoms were. He remembers thinking it was a cold creeping up on him, or maybe he was working too quickly and it was causing him to feel dizzy. But after testing positive, Munoz realized he wasn't well enough to be on his own, so he drove to his daughter's house in Vancouver. A few days later, Munoz says he called her at work, feeling like he was on the verge of death.
She arrived and took me to the hospital, but I remember what hurt the most was my head. I felt like my head was about to explode, and little by little, my lungs felt like they were failing me.
He says he didn't work for several months due to pulmonary issues. Even now, he deals with lingering symptoms of weak muscles and respiratory problems. Farm workers Lorena Avalos and her husband Jose Leon tell of a similar experience. Leon says he was a healthy man who rarely got sick. Even during the first year of the pandemic, he says he didn't get COVID. He even got vaccinated. But 2 years ago, he contracted it and wound up in the hospital.
When I went to the hospital, they put a ventilator on me to help me breathe. I was given an inhaler afterward and use it 3 times a week, but I ended up in the hospital again a month later.
Leon says doctors diagnosed him with asthma, and later he developed pneumonia. The lasting effects, he says, have been brutal on his health.
I'm scared I'll end up in the hospital again, he says.
At their dining room table, his wife, Lorena Avalos, fidgets with an inhaler as she talks about testing positive for the virus 5 times. She has struggled with breathing problems since her first infection 4 years ago. The first time I got COVID was 3 months after getting the first vaccine, and then I tested positive again 5 months after. I was getting COVID every few months. Avalos and Leon now rely on inhalers to manage their lasting symptoms at a significant cost. Because the couple doesn't have health insurance, they pay out of pocket for every inhaler they buy, each about $120.
The minute I run out, I go and get another one.
Leon is also still paying his hospitalization bills. The Washington State Institute for Public Policies estimates at least 39% of farm workers don't have medical insurance. Last year, a bill was introduced in the legislature to address health coverage equity, recognizing that immigrants, including many farm workers, are disproportionately uninsured. The bill would have expanded access for people excluded from federal programs, but it didn't pass and it wasn't heard this year.
llegara una pandemia.
If another pandemic comes around, there has to be a plan B. For now, workers like Muñoz, Avalos, and León are left managing their symptoms on their own. I'm Mónica Carrillo Casas, reporting.
And finally, for the past 5 years, a small urban farm in Vancouver, Washington, has grown produce that's culturally specific to Latino communities. But as OPB's Eric Newman reports, lately they've had to change their programs because of increased immigration enforcement.
Dark green poblano chilies, big bunches of cilantro, and red Roma tomatoes fill black plastic crates inside the common room of a housing complex in Woodland, Washington. People buzz around, choosing produce, and trying the pink, yellow, and brown Mexican pastries, or pan dulce, that are laid out on a table near the door. Michelle Vasquez is the executive director of Latinos Unidos y Floreciendo.
We have it set up as a farmers market style where folks could come in and choose the foods that they want to take instead of a food box.
The nonprofit started doing food distributions like this in 2024 in places where it's hard to access healthy produce, in Woodland and Kelso. In the last 6 months, things have changed. Many of their clients are undocumented and are too afraid to go out in public. So now it's often teenagers who come get produce for their families. One little girl who comes for food is just 5 years old.
That one is really heartbreaking for our staff, and our staff will walk her back to her apartment because her mom watches from her apartment window and she's too afraid to leave. So our staff will walk her back up because the grocery bags are too heavy for her.
One visitor, Maria Calderon, holds several bags of vegetables. She plans to use them for molcajete salsa and sopes. Calderon says it's not easy to find good food with everything that's going on. She says she wants to tell people to stay strong and that they shouldn't be afraid to go out. We have to go out for our children, she says. They have to eat. We have to go to work. Stricter immigration enforcement was a pillar of President Donald Trump's platform as a candidate, and it's still one of his administration's priorities. The White House has said mass deportations are, quote, freeing up resources and restoring safety to the American public. But many of those include people with no criminal history. In Washington state, 47% of the arrests from the beginning of Trump's second term through October 15th, 2025, were people with no criminal history, according to a February analysis by the Seattle Times. Rachel Feston is the manager of the 10-acre farm the nonprofit runs in Vancouver. Today, she's giving out produce.
They like to talk about what they're going to make with the tomatoes and the poblano, so we talk about that. And then the little kids are always trying to get extra apples, so that's always fun.
Normally, Feston works with volunteers on the farm, but in recent months, some of them stopped coming. Feston says she tries to keep her interactions at the food distribution events upbeat because of the stress the community is under.
One of the big things is joking around with them. They're always checking to see how my Spanish is doing and testing me. So I try and just be more lighthearted when I'm talking with them.
The nonprofit has had to adapt in other ways, too. Their federal funding from the USDA was frozen last year and then later restored. It's set to expire in May. Vasquez thinks they were targeted because DEI is a big part of their mission. Since then, they've scrubbed diversity language from their websites and social media. Partway through the food distribution, Vasquez gets interrupted by a woman getting produce.
I would take them 2 weeks worth of food because
She says they just got a text message about a mother who got detained the previous night. Her 2 11-year-old kids were left behind. Vasquez says those kids will now be supported by the moms in their church. I ask her, where will they live?
They live in the community, and those women know, and they are going to walk that food over to that house and make sure those babies are taken care of.
I mean, I guess in your experience, does that mean those kids end up going to wherever their parents are?
No, they'll stay in the community. This is what we're talking about. You make me choke up, because this is what we're doing.
Vasquez lives in Camas, a nice city east of Vancouver. She says if she wasn't at places like this market or the farm, she could live in a bubble, separate from the effects of the current immigration policies.
How would I know? And it's not about what's on the news. These are real people in our own neighborhoods.
A few minutes later, the tone shifts. Vasquez starts joking with the man who came in for produce. He's drinking a cup of champurrado, a thick, hot chocolate drink made with masa. She gives him a hard time because he has diabetes. "What happened to your diabetes?" she asks. "Tomorrow," he says. Tomorrow he'll deal with his diabetes. That levity is another reason for the market, to create a space where people can share food and be comfortable. I'm Eric Newman, reporting.
Appreciate you listening to Seattle Now, and thanks to our generous donors for your support. Help us out by clicking the link in the show notes, following and rating the show on your favorite podcast app. Our production team includes Caroline Chamberlain-Gomez, Bon Jones, Andy Hurst, Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers, and Paige Browning. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you soon.